the Mahoning Valley Daily Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Mahoning Valley Daily Podcast. It is September 9th, and I am Ron Cabuno. Thank you very much for tuning in once again. And thank you for tuning in to our last two shows, one with Summer DiMuccio of Outback Steakhouse in Boardman, and the other one with the superintendent of Boardman Schools, Tim Saxton. Those were two great episodes, and I implore you to check them out if you have not done so yet. Two people from two different industries and walks of life that are dealing with difficult circumstances on a day-to-day basis and really making the best of it. So I commend both of them for a job well done and continued success. I got to step up my video production skills because the interview I did with Summer was terribly lit, so I apologize for that. But thank you very much to the Boardman School District for having such awesome LED lights back there in your offices. It was basically like looking at Jason Statham and The Rock sharing the screen there with two members of the Bald Brotherhood, me and Tim, doing that interview. Definitely want to check that one out. It's a keeper. I will say, in the topic of feedback, let's just say that loud wrong can be the voice that ends up to the fore most times these days. And we cannot let loud wrong win the day. And we also have to understand that we are here to share a community with each other, like it or not. So when we're out there having differences of opinion, please do it as respectfully as possible. It is not a mindset that you should have walking out the door that you're going to be doing battle with your fellow citizens, or that somehow if somebody thinks differently than you, they are somehow un-American or the enemy in any respect. And if anybody is saying things of that nature, you tell them they're absolutely wrong. Now you have to do it respectfully, and you have to do it in a way that sets a good tone and example for others to follow in the future. So let's try that, because we can't be ashamed of the truth in the face of a lot of mounting lunacy that we see around us, but we have to be informed and we have to keep our heads cool. So please keep that in mind. In the news, we have a couple local stories, one of which are the murals that have gotten approved or tentatively approved to go up around Youngstown, at least as a concept. Now these ones are from a Brooklyn-based designer who grew up in Liberty, and they're essentially just large phrases taking off of the you in Youngstown. You can, you will, and they will be placed very, very big on the side of buildings and under tunnels going into downtown. And I think it's a cool concept. I just think there's a little bit lackluster and a little bit left to be desired in terms of the execution. It's a little grimy, and I get that it's an industrial look that is very befitting of the city, but we're trying to move forward. So maybe instead of just big white letters, we could spruce this up a little bit. Lord knows that, when the leaves fall in autumn and then all the way up through our slushy spring, it's pretty gray around here. So adding a little bit of color to these murals wouldn't be the worst idea when we're going to be looking for bits of color the majority of the year while we're staring at these things. Just a thought. I like the concept. I like the big picture thinking, and I like that we're trying to keep the net benefit for society at the fore here, making this place a nicer place to live by any means necessary. Just maybe want to rethink the execution a little bit. Just my thoughts on the matter. Another local story, which was pretty cool, is that the first solar plant near Toledo is apparently going to be one of the leading manufacturers in America's fight for production of solar panels. Biden visited this plant recently, and he said that this is going to be an integral part in countering the Chinese, who basically have the market cornered right now. And if we want to be the dominant producer of these vital components in a marketplace that is going to be the future of energy production and storage, and also at the forefront in the battle against climate change, which, as we can see, is mounting day by day, week by week, hour by hour, we have to start manufacturing these things here so that we can reap the benefits, as well as pass it along, good paying jobs to the citizens of Ohio in general. Keep an eye on that. First Solar near Toledo. Lastly, fairly disappointing story to report from Cardinal Mooney High School. It looks as though Coach Pelini will be reinstated as coach, or has been reinstated as coach. As many of you may know, he was arrested on a domestic violence charge, or a domestic violence call made by his daughter. This is like, essentially, we're living in a post-Ray Rice, Me Too world here. If you could look at the parallels in pro football, you can see that Deshaun Watson is persona non grata, is completely nuclear and will not be touched by any team because he has, I think, dozens of charges of sexual assault and harassment being levied against him by a bunch of masseuses around the country that he apparently was untoward with. So the fact that this guy is not going to be able to find a home unless someone is really willing to roll the dice and take the hit in public sentiment and goodwill from their fan base, I don't see this guy getting a job anytime soon. And yet, Coach Pelini is going to be coaching football probably as soon as this week. I think it's absolutely insane. I think it's also insane that this guy isn't even an educator, and that you can have someone who isn't part of the school system be leading your children on the field. He's not even going to get a suspension. He's not even going to miss a game as far as I know. And that is completely ludicrous, especially when this is a religious organization, when you're supposed to have the most upstanding citizens possible and the most godly outlook towards how you run your organization. I think in the industry, this is called bad optics. Unless, of course, the supporters of Cardinal Mooney don't care. The students who play for him don't care that he is seemingly a wife beater. I hate to say that, but if you hear if you read the transcript, it's essentially his daughter calling 911 because she hears them fighting, and the next thing you know, his wife is bleeding from her eye and saying, "He hit me." I think that all adds up to what would be considered a credible charge. But when his day came in court, she decided not to press charges, and somehow all that tangential evidence wasn't enough for the court to be able to charge him on their own. That being said, everyone gets to go home, and then it's up to the school on what they do next. And in essence, they've done nothing. I don't know if you guys have heard about the story of Bishop Sycamore. It's a supposed high school or a prep school that just got outed recently by being totally fraudulent and lying to ESPN, saying that they had a bunch of 5-star recruits and getting totally housed on national television, only to find out that Bishop Sycamore, which, that's a silly name, but it kind of sounds like a football school, is essentially just a couple-year-old venture where kids, I think up to possibly 20 years old, are able to go out and play other prep schools that are, made for high school students to matriculate into pro or college athletics only. So they get to all play each other, but this was just one big scam. And these kids are living on the floor of an apartment and not actually going to any classes, but they get to consider themselves a school and are showcased on a high school showcase feature on ESPN nationwide television. This is crazy. High school athletics have lost their damn mind, and it's right in front of us. It's not just on a national stage. As you can see, the moral basement is getting lower and lower, and it happens right here at home. So unless you want this stuff to continue, you should probably write the school or have a picket or something to get this guy out of here. You got someone who's assaulting their wife, sitting there leading children on a daily basis, and the face of your school on a Friday night. really, really terrible look. It doesn't seem that Mr. Pelini is going to have to pay a price at all unless people in the community start holding him to account. I was going to talk about Biden withdrawing the nominee for leading the ATF, apparently due to his history of gun control advocacy, but I'm just going to give you the ins and outs of that real quick, and then we'll be out of here. So essentially, this guy was part of the ATF for decades and only left it because he wanted to join a gun control advocacy group that's being led by Gabby Giffords. If you remember, she is a congresswoman who was shot and survived some years ago. Well, his noble cause was seen to be too far out of bounds, even though, as you might remember, in the Trump administration, Mr. Scott Pruitt was tapped to lead the EPA, and this was a man who essentially said his job was, before he took the EPA position, was to wake up, go to work, sue the Obama administration and the EPA, and then go home. This is a guy who was not sure if he needed to say that removing lead from gasoline was an important thing to continue. He said that he wasn't sure if he needed to continue the mercury and air toxin standards enforcement, or at least he said he would do it while it was still on the books, while actively trying to get that off the books. I can't believe the hypocrisy and the essentially dual track of reasoning that we live in, Republicans versus Democrats. If you have somebody who wants to lead the ATF, who also wants to be part of gun control efforts, that's not allowed. You can't have responsible gun ownership leading the way at the ATF, apparently. But you can have somebody who wants to deregulate and pollute the environment running the EPA. A bit of high-level hypocrisy to end the show today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow.